So let us start enthusiastically. Last part of the lesson, we should be very, very careful, and I think we should be able to listen each and every point from the core of our heart. So let us start. Now, just before starting today's session, just look at this particular question. Look at this question, dear students. What possible plot line could the story continue with? What is the plot of a story? Note it down, dear student, note it down. Plot of the story is what happens in the story. It means what happens in the story. And what is plot line? Just look at the meaning of this particular, these two words, plot line. Means the next episode of the story. Very clear. The next direction of the series of occurrences of the story. I think you are very clear up to this particular question. What possible plot line could be? Could the story continue with? I think you are very smart to understand this particular question. Now let us look at the meaning of this question first. Before moving forward, just look at the meaning of this particular question. What possible plot line could be story? Could the story continue with? If we look at the next episode of the story, that can be two, not one. Why? If we look at this little girl, Jo, she wants the story to be ended with positive note. What is the positive note in this story? You have to look at Roger skunk was very, 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 very happy with very fine fragrance. And she never wanted that the fragrance to be away from that animal. She never wanted. But if we look at this episode, thing, we have done this. Yesterday, we were able to look at little bit glimpse of this particular question. Why is this particular question asked? Because you want the story to be ended like fairy tale stories. Fairy tale stories, I think you are able to understand. But on the contrary, her father wanted that the story must be ended very different. As per the instruction of mother of Roger skunk, wanted the story to be ended in that way. So that is why this particular query is in front of us. What possible plot line could the story continue with? So I think at this particular moment, till this particular moment, we can't predict. So listen carefully to look at the answer of this particular query in a very systematic way. So let us start. Yes, because this is very interesting. Roger skunk's mommy said, "What's that awful smell?" Roger skunk's mom became very irritated to look at that fragrance. Oh, what? She was extremely surprised. So that is why WHA-AT. She was inquiring the things. At this particular moment, she is at the extreme level of her surprise. And Roger skunk said, "It's me, mommy." Roger skunk had replied that It was he. And he also added that he smelled like roses. Because at that particular moment, the mother was not able to recognize her child. Very clear. And she said, "Who made you smell like that?" Mother became very angry at this particular stage. So that is why she was inquiring a very irritated way. What was her query? Who made you smell like that? She was inquiring from Roger's skunk that who was responsible to convert his smell into the fragrance of roses. And he said, the wizard. And she said, well off all the nerve, you come with me. And we are going right back to that very awful wizard. Now just look at the action and reaction of Roger's mom. She became very irritated. Very irritated. I had told you this particular point yesterday. And moreover, I think you are with the knowledge to recognize what are idioms and what are phrases. All the now is an idiom. How can we recognize this? Because if we want to get the knowledge of idiom, we must be able to peep deep into the meaning of that. Because it highlights figurative meaning only. In order to understand that particular idiom, we must be able to peep deep into those words which we use for that particular idiom. All the now means angry, anger, shock. I think very clear. This is idiom. I think very clear. You can come with me. She had instructed her child, Roger's skunk, to follow her. And she had also announced that they had been going right back to that awful visit. She had announced that they were just moving towards that magician. And she instructed her child to accompany her. I think very clear up to this particular point, there is no doubt in that. Let us move forward. Jo sat up, her hands dabbling in the air with genuine pride. But Daddy, then he said about the other little animals run away. Her hands skittered off into the underbrush. Very clear so far as this particular paragraph is concerned. No doubt this paragraph is small, but it is with wonderful explanation or wonderful meaning. Just look at the actions and reactions of that girl, Jo. The basic purpose of telling the story of Jack was to make his daughter sleepy during naps. But here in this paragraph, Joe's actions and reactions are very different. Joe's actions and reactions are in vice versa order, in a contradictory order. Instead of sleeping, she was in sitting position. You must have noted down the meaning of dabbling, means moving. She was just acting and reacting by moving her hands purposelessly. In the air, I think you are able to understand this particular point. She was just making actions and reactions by moving her hands with genuine fright. Genuine fright. I think you are very clear up to the meaning of this particular word. It means she was really afraid. To listen that part of the story while mother was irritated to look at the fragrance of Roger's skunk. She was really afraid of. She never want that particular point in the story. She never want that particular episode in the story. But Daddy, then he said about the other little animals run away. Now she was just interrupting her father again. I was thinking, but Dad, then Roger's skunk must have informed his mother that the other animals would not play with him if he would be with worst kind of smell. Other animals would be very far away from him. I think very clear. Her hands skittered off. Just look at this particular tough word, skittered. It means moved quickly. She was overreacting here. So that is why her hands were moving very quickly into the underbrush. Note on the meaning of underbrush. She wanted to take nap at that particular moment. So that is why she was in her bed and automatically she was covered with quilt or comforter. Underbrush means quilt or comforter. Very clear up to this particular point, there is no doubt in that. Her hands are moving into the quilt or comforter. I think very clear up to this particular point, there is no doubt in that. Now let's move forward. All right, he said. But mommy, all the other little animals run away. And she said, I don't care. You smelled the way a little skunk should have. And I'm going to take you right back to that wizard. And she took an umbrella and went back with Roger's skunk and hit that wizard right over the head. Now, just look at sincerity level of Jack here. Here he had followed the advice of Joe. What was the advice of Joe at that particular moment? She had advised her dad that that particular animal must have told his mother that other animals would be very far away from him if he would be converted into same kind of fragrance. So father just looked at the next episode as per the instruction of his daughter. Okay, all right, he said. Just adding the same line instructed by his daughter. But mommy, now these are the words of Roger's skunk. Father was telling the story in the words of Roger's skunk. But mommy, all the other little animals run away. And she said, just announced that particular point. Roger's skunk had just told his mother that the other animals would be very far away from him. And he would again be in pessimistic condition. He wanted to highlight that particular point. Because nobody would be with him to play. I think very clear here. Jack had followed the advice of Joe. Because if we look at the previous paragraph, she had advised her father. But daddy, then he said about the other little animals run away. I think father had noted down that particular point and given the next episode or next point of the story in the same order. Just look at. And she said, was the reply of mother, while Roger's skunk had just told the critical state after the conversion of that particular fragrance. Just look at. What was the reply of, or what was, I think, the declaration of Roger Skunk's mom? She had announced, that she didn't care. You smelled the way a little skunk should have. Just announced that Roger Skunk must smell the way a little skunk should have. And she had further announced that she was going to take him right back to that vision. And she took an umbrella. She had taken an umbrella and went back with Roger's son. Acted and reacted in a very quick way. She had taken an umbrella and she had moved towards the house of wizard or magician with Roger's son. Very clear, and hit that wizard right over the head. While she was able to reach at the house of magician or wizard, while wizard had opened the door, Roger Skunk's mom had just taken a very quick action. What was the quick action? It hit that particular magician over his head. Very clear, with umbrella. She had used the umbrella to hit that magician because she was extremely irritated that at that particular moment. I think you are able to look at the beauty of this particular paragraph in a very sincere way. But here, I think a question arises. Very, very important, very significant question arises. The question is, why was Roger Skunk's mom irritated to look at the fragrance of roses? Dear students, she was irritated. The basic reason behind that was worst kind of smell of Roger Skunk was to save him from hunters, from enemies. Enemies used to be away from him to smell that kind of negative smell. Every parent wants welfare of their children. But children are not able to recognize sometimes. Mother was worried about the safety of her child. So that is why she had become irritated. You can close your eyes and think on that particular line that many times your parents had become irritated. Why, dear students? Why? The reason behind is same. They want your safety. So that is why they had become, or they are becoming, or they become irritated or angry to look at your negative actions and reactions. I think you must have learned a very fine life skill here. Very clear. Let us move forward. No, Jo said, and put her hand out to touch his lips. Yet even in her agitation didn't quite dare to stop the source of truth. Inspiration came to her. Then the wizard hit her on the head and didn't change that little skunk back. Just look at this critical paragraph. Why is it critical? The reason is here that little girl is acting and reacting in a very different order. Well, her father was telling her the story while he had told this particular point that mother had reached at the house of wizard and hit that wizard all over the head or over his head. She became extremely irritated. She here means small girl, Jo. So that is why she was commenting like that. No, Joseph. Here she wanted to highlight that that particular action was very negative. That particular point must be deleted away from the story, and put her hand out to touch his lips. So she had put out her hand to touch the lips of her father because she never wanted to listen that particular point. She never wanted her father to elaborate that particular point. She wanted that that point must be deleted out from the story. Yet even in her agitation, didn't quite dare to stop the source of truth. Tried her best, overreacted. She had put her hand out to touch the lips of uh, her father, so that must be silent, must not extend that particular point. But here, if we look at the behavior of that girl, that was agitating behavior, revolting behavior. So that is why next, look at the next line. Even in her agitation, while she was revolting at the extreme level, didn't quite dare to stop the source of truth. Father was telling the story in continuity. Source of truth, matlab, you have to look at the next episode of the story. The very, very important part of the story. Inspiration came to her. Was able to get motivation. And the visit hit her on the head. The inspiration was for her only. But that inspiration or motivation was quite contrary to the basic point of the story. What was the inspiration? You had commented in a very different way. Then the wizard hit her on the head and didn't change that little skunk back. I think you are very clear up to this particular point. While the father was not able to look at the recommendation or to look at the signal of the girl while she was trying that particular point, what was the point? You have to look at the things that while mother of Roger's skunk had hit wizard over the head. He wanted that that point must be deleted away from the story. The father was not able to delete that particular point from the story, and she was able to look at the motivation she would like to make the conversion in the story in a very different order by adding this particular sentence. And then the wizard hit her on the head. Just look at here. She wanted to highlight that point that wizard must have taken the action in the same order. The wizard must have hit mother on her head. I think very clear up to this particular point, and didn't change that little skunk back. Just look at in the addition, or I think she had added that particular point that she must not have changed the fragrance of roses of that animal. The girl was thinking at the very different. We look at the thinking level of children, entirely different. If we look at the thinking level of adults, it is entirely different. I think very, 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 very clear. You are crystal clear up to this particular point. Father was not able to make the conversion as per the instruction of that girl at this particular moment. So that is why she got agitated. And immediately she was motivated to look at the next conversion in the story. She had suggested her father. What was her suggestion? That she wanted to look at that particular point. She wanted from the side of her father to add this particular point in the story that wizard must hit mother on the head and he must not change that little skunk back. Very clear. No, he said. The wizard said, okay. And Roger's skunk didn't smell of roses anymore. He smelled very bad again. Here, the father was not following, or he was not agree to that particular point. What was the point? Suggestion given by Joe. Very clear, there is no doubt in that. Now just look at. No, he said. Father replied in negative. If we look at this particular no, it highlights that father had replied that would never ever be able to look at that particular episode or that particular sentence in that particular story. Was not accurate. What was the point? Then the wizard hit her on the head back and didn't change that little skunk back. Father had said bluntly no for that particular suggestion of Joe. Now let us be in continuity. Father was telling the story in continuity. The wizard said, okay, just made the conversion as per his own desire. But the magician was agreed and said, okay, all right. The magician had followed the advice of Roger Skunk's mom. And Roger Skunk didn't smell of roses anymore. He was agreeing to that particular point that ever be ready to convert Roger Skunk into the same smell again. He smelled very bad. The conversion had happened. Due to his magic spell, he had made the conversion again and started smelling in a worst way. Very clear up to this particular point. You are very clear so far as this particular point is concerned. Now just look at why was father not agreeing to that particular point? That magician must hit hard on mother's head. Very important reason for that. Here, Jack wanted to highlight the particular point that mothers are always important. What they say or what they suggest, extremely important. It's very clear up to this particular point. You have to look at the basics simultaneously. So that is why the father was not agreeing with that particular point. That magician had hit that mommy on her head. Very clear. But the other little just look at this particular girl. She was again overreacting. She became irritated at this particular stage. So that is why she was misspelling this word animal. Actually, it means animals. Very clear. He was, I think, not able to look at this word in a very sincere way. She was mispronouncing this word animal. Particularly, it means animals. Here, she was extremely irritated. So, she had become very negative. So that is why she was not able to pronounce word animals in a proper way. Very clear. She wanted to highlight that particular point. If we look at this particular sentence, she wanted to highlight that particular point. Joe wanted to highlight that particular point. That what would be the condition of that little animal? What animal? I think amum here means Roger's skunk. Here she wanted to highlight that particular point, that what would be the condition of that particular animal, because that animal was again in pessimistic state. Jo was a small girl, so that is why she was thinking differently. Whereas the thinking level of her father was quite contrary. Very clear up to this particular point, there is no doubt. John, it's daddy's story. Shall daddy not tell you any more stories? Just look at this particular sentence first. Father was irritated to look at the action and reaction of that particular girl, or the words of that particular girl. Father was irritated to listen. So that is why he was highlighting that particular point, John. If we look at the complete name of Joe, that was John. I think very clear up to this particular point. It's a daddy's story. Father was highlighting the point that it is dad's story. Here, it's a daddy's story means here father wanted to highlight that particular point, that father was telling the story to that girl, and that girl possessed no right to interfere in that. I think very clear. Shall daddy not tell you any more stories? Then Jack raised a query. What was the query? Shall daddy not tell you any more stories? Now, he wanted to inquire from that particular girl that if her daddy would not tell her any more stories. Just look at it. Because at this particular stage, Jack become extremely irritated to look at the attitude of that girl. Her broad face looked at him through sifted light, astounded. Note down the meaning. I think you must have written the meaning of sifted, but I am repeating the meaning. Sifted, basically, sifted light, you have to look at the thing. Entrance of light. Very clear. The light was entering in that particular room from window. No doubt window was covered with curtains. But again, light was seen from somewhere. Very clear. Astounded. Astounded means, dear students, shocked. Now, just look at the meaning. Her broad face looked at him. Broad face. Why broad face? Why this particular face is highlighted with broad? Because that girl was no more a little girl. She was little bit a grown-up girl, so that is why with her growth, the face had become grown up. Broad face. Chubby face. She looked at her father through sifted light. Whatever the light was coming into the room, was able to observe her father. Because the father had just arranged curtains and switched off the lights of that particular room. Because he wanted that that girl must be in sleepy order. Very clear. Her broad face looked at him through sifted light, astounded. She was very shocked. This is what happened then. There was continuing the story. That was the point in the story. He wanted to highlight that particular point. This is what happened then. Roger's skunk and his mommy went home. The conversion was done. Mother was very happy because for her, the safety of her child was more important than the fragrance of roses. Already told you. So that is why after the conversion, the same kind of smell, worst kind of smell, mother became very happy and we look at the attachment of this particular sentence. This is what happened. That was telling that was the conversion in the story. That was the point, next point of the story. Roger's skunk, now we were just extending the story. Roger's skunk and his mommy went home. Yes, they had gone towards their home. They had left wizard's house after conversion of smell and had just moved towards their home. And they heard woo, woo, and it was the choo, choo train bringing Daddy skunk home from Boston. Look at the beauty of this sentence. So they were able to look at the sound of train. The early part of the chapter we had already studied that Roger Skunk's father used to go to Boston, might be for some job, might be for some assignment. I think he used to travel by train. So the sound of train, or I think railway station, highlighted by highlighting these words. Choo, choo, woo, woo. I think very clear. The sound of that particular train bringing Daddy skunk home from Boston. Daddy was about to reach at his home from Boston. I already told you people, Boston. I have already introduced this particular word. It's a city in USA. I think very clear up to this particular point. So the train was already there, the railway station. His father was about to reach at his home, and he had reached at his home. Then they were busy in their meals, meals, and they had lima beans, celery, liver, mashed potatoes, and pie. Oh my, what is it? Just look at the menu of meal. They had taken very fine meal after that because Roger's mom was very happy at that particular moment. Because at the particular moment she was 100% sure that her child is safe due to that worst kind of smell. That was a recognition of their community. Their community used to be away from hunters due to that particular worst kind of smell. Now it is time to close the lecture. Dear students, tried my best to explain each and every point. Still, if you feel that you want some query, feel free.